In this lesson, we're going to be talking about solving quadratics using the zero product property. This worksheet is in your packet. It's titled Solving Using the Zero Product Property. And we can take the notes right on here. The zero product property is the property you learned that said any number times zero gives you zero. So it is not a complicated property. It's saying anything times zero equals zero. So when we go to solve these equations using that property, you'll notice all of them are saying something times something else equals zero. A plus 4 times A plus 6 equals zero. Well, what that means is either A plus 4 has to equal zero, so A plus 4 can equal zero, and A plus 6 can equal zero. And if we solve each of those equations, so subtract 4 from both sides on the first one, we get A equals -4. And subtract 6 on the second equation, we get A equals -6. And those are our two solutions. A equals -4 and A equals -6. So just like when we were solving absolute value equations, we're going to get two solutions on most of these problems. Number 2 says A minus 2 times A plus 1 equals 0. So A minus 2, A minus 2 equals 0, and A plus 1 equals 0. So add 2 to both sides on the first equation, and we get A equals 2. Subtract 1 from both sides on the second equation, and A equals -1. And those are our two solutions. If we plugged 2 in for both of these A's, we would get 0 times 3, and 0 times 3 equals 0. If we plugged the -1 into both of those A's, we'd get -3 times 0 equals 0, which is also accurate. So both of those answers work in the equation. You'll notice on number 3 and number 4 that instead of having a binomial times a binomial, they have a monomial, 2x times a binomial, x minus 2. But might be helpful to you to put parentheses around that 2x so you can see that it's a separate part. So either for this one, we have 2x equals 0, 2x equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. So on the first one, we're going to divide both sides by 2. Well, 0 divided by 2 is still 0. So x equals 0. And on the second one, we add 2 to both sides, so x equals 2. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll notice that some of them get a little bit more complicated, not a lot, but you'll notice on, say, number 6, that we have b minus 2 is going to equal 0. Oh, goodness. Let's see. B minus 2 equals 0. And you might have noticed that it's going to be the opposite of that minus 2. B is going to be positive 2, right? Because what number minus 2 is going to give you 0? Well, that's going to be positive 2. But this second one, there's a coefficient on the x. We have 3b, well, not b, not x, 3b minus 4 equals 0. So for that, we're going to need to do just a little bit more work. Add 4 to both sides, and we get 3b equals 4. And then we divide by 3, and b equals 4/3. And we're just going to leave that 4/3. Don't make it a mixed number. 4/3 is just fine. And that's how we solve using the factoring. After this, you're going to get into the problems where you need to factor and then solve. So you'll have a problem like x squared plus 8x plus 12 equals 0. Well, to solve using the zero product property, number 1 is it has to be equal to 0. We can't use the zero product property unless it's equal to 0. So that's great. We're already there. Then we're going to go ahead and factor this part like we were doing earlier. To get x squared, we do x times x To multiply and get 12, it's either 1 times 12. Well, that adds to give me 13, so that's not it. 2 times 6, that adds to give me 8. So plus 2 times plus 6 equals 0. And then I go ahead and solve. So x plus 2 equals 0, or x plus 6 equals 0. X plus 6 equals 0. We solve both of those, so x equals negative 2, and x equals negative 6. So first we factored, then we practiced using that factoring to solve, and then on the last worksheet, you're going to put both of those things together, and you're going to factor first, and then you're going to use that factoring to solve.